All right, AP Environmental. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Unit 5. We're going to start this unit today. This is a really big unit. There's a lot of stuff in it. Some of the topics are a little bit easier to understand than others. This one, I think, is a pretty easy one. It's called The Tragedy of the Commons. Now, before we get into what the tragedy of the commons is, I think it's really important to understand the just the main topic of Unit 5, which is land and water use. So we're going to talk in this unit all about, anthropogenically, how humans use the land, productively and non-productively, and also how we use water and what are some of the problems that are associated with that as well. All right, so topic 5.1 again deals with the tragedy of the commons. And before we kind of get into the tragedy, we need to first understand what a commons is. Now, environmentally speaking, a commons is an area or a resource that can be used by everybody, but it's regulated by nobody. All right, the ocean is a great example. The ocean is, a resource. I mean, anybody, if they want to go fishing, you can go fishing. If you want to, you can go catch, a tuna, or you can, ride a boat and whatever. You can go scuba diving. So it's a resource that anybody can use. Other examples of commons are air. Anybody can breathe in the air, right? That's our right to do that. Land, groundwater, forests, these are all just common things that everybody uses. All right, so we have to kind of, I guess, define that term first. So now I suppose we have to figure out what the tragedy of the commons is. And I guess if you think about it, we've got these resources that we're all sharing. And like, what could possibly go wrong, right? If everybody has access to the same resource? Well, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Um, but kind of the definition, I suppose, of the tragedy is it's this tendency that anytime we share something, whether it be land or the air or the ocean, that resource tends to become depleted or misused because people act selfishly. They act from self-interest for short-term gain. Okay. So in other words, again, people are selfish, people are greedy, and they use something up that is meant to be used by everybody, and it ends up ruining it for everybody. Air pollution is a great example of this, but a lot of things, a lot of anthropogenic things can lead to this. Just a couple of examples. Just the fact that we overuse resources. Overfishing, great example. If we catch all the fish, and don't let them rebreed and repopulate, then we're ruining that resource. We're depleting that resource to the point where there aren't going to be any left. I mean, we can overfish to the point of extinction. That can happen. So that's becoming a main issue. The other one is just misusing our resources. Clean air is something that we all kind of want. We want to cherish that. We don't want to, breathe in polluted air, but again, we misuse it, by polluting it, putting things into the air that aren't meant to be there, and that ends up becoming a big problem. So a lot of anthropogenic things can lead to this tragedy of these shared resources becoming depleted or becoming ruined because of what we're doing. Okay. All right. Another really good example. This is just kind of a textbook example, I suppose, but is grasslands. Again, commons is a shared resource; anybody can use it. But grasslands, pastured areas, these are no different. I mean, these are all areas that can be used for a variety of purposes. One of the things, especially in the United States, that we use our grasslands for is they provide food for grazing animals, like cattle and bison and things like that. So let's just say that we have this commons area. Let's say this is just a 40 acre or a 16 hectare plot of land that can be used again for a variety of purposes. But let's just say that there's some local farmers that want to use this area to raise some cattle. So let's say we have four different cattle owners that are going to use this land, and each cattle owner has five cows, represented by the five different colors. These black cows are owned by one owner. These kind of gray cows are owned by a different person, whatever. But each owner has five cows, and they can let these cows, live off of the land, graze off of the land. So basically, this area, this commons, it has a 20 cow carrying capacity. Remember that term from Unit 3. So if 20 cows is the maximum capacity, that can sustain the commons, we can't go over that. If we do, then the land can be depleted, right? So the result here is if, the land is used sustainably, then it can be used indefinitely. As long as these owners, these four owners of these cows, if they just keep five cows in there, then everybody's good. They can keep reusing that land over and over again. The grass can regrow at a rate that won't be depleted by these cows. So that would be a good thing as long as they do that. But again, here's where the tragedy comes in. You're going to get these owners that get greedy because each one of those cows is a dollar sign, right? I mean, they're going to generate money for the cattle owner. So let's say these cattle owners like, well, we've got five cows, but what's one more? One more cow can't hurt, right? So if I put one more cow in the pasture, then it's going to get me some more money. But I mean, imagine that. I mean, if the carrying capacity is 20, now you've got all these owners now putting an extra cow in the pasture. Now we've gone beyond that carrying capacity. We call that the tipping point, right? We've gotten past, this level of sustainability, and now the land is being used unsustainably, and all the grass is completely depleted to the point where it can't grow back fast enough, and you've exposed all the topsoil, and it probably blows away in the wind, and you probably can't even grow any grass there anymore. So again, the tragedy is the fact that these cow owners, if they would have just done what they were supposed to do, they wouldn't have ruined it for everybody. But again, they got greedy, and we see the result. Okay. So that's the tragedy of the commons. Now, what are some solutions to this? There are some things, one of them is private ownership. And the idea here is that, if you own the land or you own the commons, then you're much less likely to exploit it. Let's say, for example, you have an area of land that you own. Well, you don't want to ruin that land by putting too many cows in that area because it'll be all completely depleted. So, if you own it, the less likely you are to exploit it. At least that's the idea. It doesn't always work out that way. Government regulations. Some people don't like this. Some people are okay with it. The government can prevent the overuse of a common resource and help the environment. Some good examples of this are things like hunting and fishing regulations, like putting a limit on how many fish can be caught per day, whatever. Land use permits, saying, hey, if you're going to use this land, you can only use it in a certain way, or you got to purchase it. You can only have so many cows on it, whatever. Buying a permit to use the land, enforcing quotas or limits. For example, if you let's say you're a fishing company and you're out there fishing for crabs or something like those shows on Discovery Channel. If let's say the limit is, I don't know, 2,000 crabs a week or something. Well, if you go over that quota, if you catch more than what you're supposed to, the government can fine you. If you stay under your quota, the government may actually pay you. Maybe there's an incentive for you to stay under that quota. So that's something that the government can do. Forests, right? Forests are a commons. Instead of just going through and just clear cutting an entire forest, instead, maybe selective cutting. That will be something that the government can enforce and say, hey, you can remove, these trees, maybe these older ones, but the younger ones you have to keep there. So that's something that possibly could happen as well. And they do that. Another thing that we can do is just replenish our resources. If we're going to cut down trees, for example, then the least we can do, I guess, is replant them, right? Throwing back fish. If you catch fish, maybe you keep some and maybe you throw back the females that are carrying the eggs. That probably would help the population. Rotate the land for grazing. Maybe you've got your cows on, let's say, 1 acre of land, and then after 1 week, you move them to another. After 1 week, you move them to another. That way, as you rotate, you're letting that land regenerate itself and regrow. Then maybe you can come back and use it again, right? So these are all ways to replenish resources. So there are some solutions to it, but I think the big problem is that in a lot of countries, these things aren't being done. They're not being enforced. Even in our country, there's some areas of our country where we're exploiting a lot of our common resources, and I don't know, maybe the government should get more involved. If that's what we're going to end up doing. But ultimately, we're responsible, for these commons. We're responsible for how we use it. But you got to also remember we've got 7.8 billion people on this planet, and we're gonna have to use resources. The only thing is, we only have so much. So we're gonna have to get creative in how we use some of these things with a growing population. It all goes back to the population. I mean, if we only had 3 billion people, then maybe we wouldn't have so much tragedy of our commons. But because we have so many people, we're probably going to see more and more of this again, unless we get more creative as a people. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a good day. I will see you soon.